Basic guest communication. Learning how to communicate with your guests involves more than simply speaking to them. Rather, professional communication is an art that involves practice, skill, reading the guest, and mastering your timing. So in this lesson, we'll be looking at some principles involved in great guest communication during service. They are: speak clearly, use guest names, listen actively, keep the guest informed, engage with the host, and communicate as a team. Firstly, speak clearly. Whenever you speak to a guest, ensure that you speak slowly and clearly. Form your words carefully and with purpose. Also be aware of the volume of your voice and adjust it depending on the situation. If you are talking to the table, speak loudly and clearly enough so that everyone can hear you, but not so loud that the next table can hear you. Similarly, if you are engaging with just one guest, for example about dietary requirements or where the restrooms are, lower your volume so that only that guest can hear you. This type of information doesn't concern the other guests at this time. Next, use guest names. If you know the guest's name, always use it. This will make the guest feel extra special and welcome.
Excuse me, Sandy. A slice of delicious fresh ciabatta.
Ah, thank you, Collins. Thank you so much. Perfect.
Yes, Bloom. A slice of fresh ciabatta.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
If your restaurant is part of a hotel or resort, this information is readily available. Ask the guest for their room number and check the day sheet. From there, always address the guest by their name. Depending on the style of service at your establishment, you may call the guest by their surname. For example, Mr. Smith or Miss Lawrence. Alternatively, you may have a more informal style where the guests are called by their first name. For example, James or Sarah. Imagine the guest's delight when you address them using their name without them even having introduced themselves. This shows great care for the guest and fantastic communication within your establishment. Similarly, whenever a guest walks past you, step back and acknowledge them with a smile, a nod, and a greeting. For example, Mr. Jones or Ma'am. This is basic good manners and makes the guest feel welcome. Now let's move on to active listening. Have you ever found that you hear someone is talking to you, but afterwards you don't remember a thing? That's the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is realizing that someone is talking, but listening is realizing what the someone is saying. When interacting with the guest, you must always listen actively and make sure that you register what the guest needs. For example, it would be exceedingly irritating for the guest if you take their order without listening, and then have to go back to the table, interrupt them again, and have to ask the guest to repeat the order. This means that you need to listen actively when the guest is speaking. Lean forward slightly, focus on what they are saying, and write it down. This not only helps you to remember better, but also comforts the guest by showing them that you are listening. Now let's learn about how to keep the guest informed. Throughout the dining experience, ensure that you keep the guest informed and let them know what will be happening next. For example, when delivering the menu to the guest, tell them that you will be back to make a recommendation. This helps to manage their expectations. Or, if their order is being held up, keep the guest informed of how long their food will be. That said, bear in mind that whenever you go to the table to tell the guest something, you are interrupting them. So to keep interruptions to a minimum, always have another reason to go to the table. Inform the guest while topping up their drinks or delivering cutlery. That way, you kill two birds with one stone. Next, let's look at engaging with the host. When you are serving larger tables, it can be difficult to communicate with all the guests. In these situations, the host is your link to communicating with the table. The host is usually the person under whose name the booking is made, and often the person who will be paying for the meal. When it comes to asking whether the table is ready to order, or ordering more wine for example, you can confirm this with the host. Finally, let's finish off with how to communicate as a team. You might not have thought of it, but teamwork is important when communicating with guests. This is because information must be handed over among colleagues. For example, if the reception head waiter has determined the guests' names, they should hand that information over to the table's waiter. Another great way in which you can work as a team to keep communication efficient is through signaling. Remember the hand signals we discussed in Level 1. There are similar signals you can use to indicate which guest communication has taken place. For example, if you have a more casual style of service and you have taken a drinks order, place coasters on the table. This will signal to waiters walking past that these guests have ordered drinks, and they won't need to ask the guest. Sectioning communication is another powerful way to avoid repetition. For example, if you have foreign guests on holiday, it will get annoying if every waiter asks them, "How was your trip so far?" Rather, assign a different question to each waiter. For example, the hostess will ask them how their flight was, the section waiter asks them where they are staying, and the manager informs them of places of interest. So to recap, the main points to remember with guest communication are speak clearly, use guest names, listen actively, keep the guest informed, engage with the host, and communicate as a team. Before your next service, think of signals your team can use that suit your establishment and style of service, perhaps using hand signals or objects like the placement of coasters or the sugar bowl.